I think the first time I heard about artificial intelligence was in my 4th standard computer science textbook, where they just predicted that by the time I am in college, computers will be able to taste food and tell you whether salt is missing.
That was there in your 4th standard
Yeah,
textbook?
that was in my 4th standard textbook.
Okay, it's about time we revamped the textbooks then. Hi, my name is Ravindran. Right? And,
Nice to meet you.
Likewise. And I'm a professor here at IIT Madras, and I work a lot in AI and machine learning.
I'm Naina Mahajan. I'm from Bhavans Rajaji Vidyashram. I study in the 6th grade, and I've always been quite fascinated by computers. Something that would take maybe hours on a piece of paper, you can do it in seconds on the computer.
So have you heard of this term AI?
Yeah, I have heard of it, don't know much about it. It stands for artificial intelligence. So I'd say that you're just trying to recreate human intelligence, basically trying to humanize computers a little.
Okay.
That's what I've understood.
Okay. So, so what do you think is intelligence? If somebody plays chess, would you call that person an intelligent person?
I'd say that that's one level of intelligence, say like logical intelligence or something.
Okay. Then what other kinds of intelligence are there? I'm just curious. Now.
Like, I'd say maybe the ability to interact with people.
How about if I show you a picture? Right? You tell me whether there is a boy or a girl in the picture.
I'd say that's a very, very basic type of intelligence.
Okay. And then how about something like, hey, go to the shop and buy some milk and come back? No? Not intelligent behavior. Okay. A computer that could beat world champions in chess was built several decades back. But then, if the robot has to get up, walk out on this staircase, right, and go walk to the shop, buy the milk and come back, we don't have a computer that can do that yet.
Wow.
Right, and that is a very, very active area of research in AI.
So do you think that it's very difficult for humans to like program an artificial intelligence to have emotional or social qualities because it's built into our systems? We don't really have to work towards it much?
There are people who have bad emotional quotient and bad social intelligence. So having said that, we could write programs that mimic some kind of things based on some kind of set rules. So I don't know if you've heard of this saying, if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. Right? So now, okay, if it acts like a human being, if it emotes like a human being, would you call it a human being?
Not necessarily, given the...
Yeah, so that's the thing, right? So some people argue that, oh yeah, if we can write a program that makes it sound like responding to social cues, if somebody pats its head and says good computer, it'll work better. I don't know, if you talk about things like that, right? So yeah, you can make it do that, right? It doesn't mean that the computer itself has any internal driver towards any emotions.
So where is the AI like it's contributed in a very big way to a particular field?
Have your family ever used Google Maps when you're driving?
Definitely.
There you use AI. And then there are areas in medicine where AI has significantly helped improve the quality of care and things like that. Your search engine, it's AI that has made your Google so proficient at locating exactly what you want.
I see why AI is so important now, because it's turning into this incredibly important part of our lives, because a lot of people would be nowhere without Google Maps and other such artificial intelligence.
I'm Anshukman MJ and I'm from class 10, and I like AI because it's a relatively new concept and a new technology that's emerged when the lockdown started and everyone was at home. That's when I got to know more about AI.
What do you know about AI?
Yeah, it's something that's done to mimic our intelligence.
So AI is not that new. AI did not happen during the lockdown. AI has been around for a while. When the first original motivation with AI started out, do you know when that was?
That was 1956
My God.
by
Okay.
John McCarthy.
Sure. So he has done a lot of preparation for the interview and coming, right? So McCarthy was one of those people, right? So there were like all these 10 people who got together in this place called Dartmouth. So this is called the Dartmouth Conference. There they came out with this declaration saying that so we are trying to build this new area of discipline, and they named it AI. It's a kind of a misnomer, but anyway, they still named it AI. So people have been doing it from back then, right? So looking at the techniques for playing chess were written down, right? The kind of solution process for chess was written down a lot earlier. Right? So what happened in the 90s that allowed chess machines, chess engines to beat humans?
So they had their own algorithms,
That has been around for a long time.
which had been much better than our human thinking. So they're able to do this, but they can't walk or they can't run.
Now you're getting ahead of yourself. I was asking you, what happened in the 90s that allowed these algorithms to beat humans? Computers became more powerful.
Processing
Processing
Yes.
became more powerful. And then now again you see this huge surge of interest in AI. So what changed in 2000s?
2000s we started using models which are unlabeled, maybe without labeled data.
No, you already answered this question once before. I asked you this question about the 90s, right? What happened?
In 90s the computing power increased.
What happened in 2000s?
It increased more.
Yeah. So that's basically what happened, right? So the computing power increased more. So I had these algorithms that let me learn the process, right? That was already there. Right? But just now that I have a lot more compute power, I was able to examine not just thousands of examples, I was able to look at millions of examples, hundreds of millions of examples. So I became more robust. The chances of me making mistakes became lesser and lesser, right? Therefore, these things started solving very, very hard problems. They started getting better than humans at solving some of the problems. So now we are able to start looking at some of the issues that are there with this new way of learning, right? How a self-driving car, did you hear about a self-driving car running into the side of a truck? Because the truck was had a stainless steel side, right? And there was light reflecting from it. The light was so bright, so that the car just thought the truck was not there. It thought it was a straight road that it's looking at and went and hit it. But the AI couldn't explain. Some human being had to sit down and work with the program and see what could have gone wrong, and then they said, at this point this looked like a clear road. And I still don't know if this was the reason why the car ran into the truck, but that is the explanation that a human engineer who analyzed it is able to give, right? So now all these things start coming up, right? This kind of questions about black box, right? AI.
Black box problem is there, right? And then you have these questions about fairness, ethics, all those things. Bias. We always say, okay, if it's machine, then it has to be fair, it has to be completely balanced because it's not supposed to have any emotions, etc., right? But then we are training it using the examples that the humans generated, right? So it's going to do.
So if the humans, if the humans were biased, then the machine is going to learn something biased, right? But then there is ways to correct it.
And then I'm an English study student.
There's a lot of work that happens with AI and language, right?
Yeah.
So have you ever been interested in that? Have you looked at that?
Not looked at, but then we used to have discussions in the class and seeing if I ask somebody what your name is, and then he will reply, okay, my name is Amrita. I will reply, my name is Amrita. But then if I ask a robot or whatever, the AI programming, however it works, then maybe it can say its name. But if I ask more, how were you made and who made you? What do you think about the humans or something like that?
Have you tried asking these questions to Alexa?
No, I haven't.
You should try. Isn't that a good, interesting experiment?
Yeah,
right? So I'm just saying, people are now starting to use AI on problems that even humans have difficulty answering, right? They just conveniently create a one right answer for some of these hard problems, whether something is actually a biased news or a fake news, right? They just create a data set that looks at one viewpoint, and then they train an AI to do that. Now that bias just starts getting propagated because now we have an automated way of making those decisions. So it's actually very challenging, right? So we really need to involve people from the social sciences to figure out what are the questions that we should be employing AIs for.
Say I have a friend and then we studied together for 10 years and then we changed our paths and I'm meeting that person after 20 years.
Okay.
Now that's not the same person. We would have been in the same school, we would have had the same opinion about teachers and whatnot, but then after 20 years it's not the same thing.
Yep.
Won't it be the case with an AI? Will it be the case? I don't know.
It's a program, right? I mean, it won't change. It'll be where you left it 10 years back. You would have changed.
So what exactly is machine learning then?
Because you are giving it a fixed set of examples, right? You're making it learn from those examples, right? So instead of writing down a set of rules saying, okay, if somebody gives you this input, then you have to give this output or something. Like instead of writing a set of rules like that, machine learning is essentially giving you a set of examples. If this is the input, this is the output.
So there should always be a person feeding the input.
No, you give it a fixed set of data, right? You give it a fixed set of input output, and then it will learn one process, right? How to take an input and arrive at an output. If you leave it at that, if you don't give it any further data to learn, it will keep producing the same function every time.
What if somebody has fed it additional data?
Sure, and learn something different.
So what if the first conclusion that they arrived at is very different from the second?
It depends on the data that you feed it, right? I mean, there's nothing, the AI doesn't have any notion of correctness or anything apart from the data that is fed to it, right?
I get why we use AI. I know why people are concerned about AI affecting the humanity in a negative sense also.
Sure.
But then that happens with humans too.
Yep.
Right? Like I can have a stone, I can just throw the stone at a tree and get a mango. I can throw the stone at a person too. So, but I don't know where these two are different. I mean to be different.
You know what? AI is such a subtle technology, right? I'm not sure whether I'm throwing the stone at the tree or at another human.
Oh, okay.
That is how subtle a technology AI is. I'm throwing the stone thinking that I'm throwing it at a tree, but I might be hitting humans on the way. And likewise, there's all these things about people making hiring decisions. Suddenly when they started using AI, the number of men who are hired went through the roof. Like basically it stopped hiring women.
Oh, why?
Because in the data that was fed, large fraction of people who are hired were men. So subconsciously it learns that, okay, hiring a man is better than hiring a woman. Not necessarily, it was not basing decisions on gender alone, but the bias was there, right? So suddenly the number of women who are hired were even lower than when humans were making those decisions.
Okay, so I'm Gayatri. I'm a 5th year student and I study physics and data science. I found that really interesting mostly because of the math that it involved. I remember watching this documentary about AlphaGo, and that was very fascinating. I think that was one of the breakthroughs in the world of artificial intelligence.
So AlphaGo kind of humanized AI, right?
Exactly.
So the people who are working in there, talking about not just about the technology, it talks about people who are working in AI, and that kind of catches your imagination a lot more than just a dry lecture on the math, right? I mean, some people get again, but it's interesting that you say that it's the hardcore mathematics that got you into AI first, right? Because that's not how the field started. The field, when AI itself started, right, it was more about trying to understand how human intelligence works, right, and then trying to come up with computational models of human intelligence that can be simulated in a computer. It's really fascinating how much what are the different reasons for which people get into artificial intelligence. Myself, right? So when I wanted to get into artificial intelligence, it's most like trying to being fascinated by the original motivation of AI. So what is it that how is it that people are intelligent, right? So how do we solve hard problems? How do we reason about things? And then I started getting into that, and then I was a little disappointed, frankly, to find that AI was a lot more about optimization and and mathematics than about human thinking at that point, right? This is early 90s, right?
I think the first time I heard about artificial intelligence was in my 4th standard computer science textbook, where they just predicted that by the time I am in college, computers will be able to do things humans can do, right? Which is taste food and tell you whether salt is missing.
That was there in your 4th standard
Yeah,
textbook?
that was in my 4th standard textbook.
Okay, it's about time we revamped the textbooks then.
So yeah, reading about artificial intelligence in my 4th standard textbook, that was at a time when we didn't have smartphones. We didn't know that we'd be carrying the internet around in our pockets, etc. At that time it sounded like a atrocious idea, shocking idea. And now women, they seem to be able to write poems and you're able to talk to them. So it's crazy how far we have come.
So what do you think of AI now that you are actually a student of AI? So what do you think of it now?
I think it's incredibly a lot simpler than it looks to somebody on the outside, because if you're talking about deep learning and neural networks, it sounds like something that would be very complicated, but then it essentially boils down to linear algebra, right, at some level. And also the idea of simulating how humans think, right, which is reinforcement learning also. And even that, so even that seems to be based on fairly simple principles, at least simpler than what I would have imagined it would be.
That's always true, right? So I mean, really great ideas are always built on simple principles. It's not just one idea, right? It's the putting together of so many different clever ideas that actually makes these systems perform such wonderful tasks, right? And also, I mean, the principles might be simple, but the whole emergent phenomenon, right, is still not explained properly, right? Yeah. So you would say that deep neural networks boil down to something like linear algebra, but what are the complex dynamics that take place so that you actually end up with the kind of solutions that you derive, right, using these simple techniques? That is not fully understood.
One challenge to that, the way I understand it, is we still don't have a thorough or even good enough understanding of cognitive sciences itself, right, or the human brain.
The human brain is a different piece, right? So there is always this thing. You can still have the human brain as a black box and still probe it and understand some of the processes which are happening. Even if you don't understand the actual neural basis of those processes.
I guess there's also the question of whether artificial intelligence will ever be able to, sufficiently mimic the human brain or human reasoning.
Sure. Yeah, that question is still there.
Yeah.
But I would be very, very pleasantly surprised if it happens in my lifetime.
Hi, I'm Raghu Venkat, co-founder and CTO at Active. Good to see you, Professor. So, as an alumni, this is the first time I'm visiting the center. I'll have to say it's awesome.
So why don't you tell me about what
Active
you do?
Yeah. Currently at Active, what we do is, other than the classic underwriting process, we also look at dynamic data like the invoices and able to, provide a loan for a person who's actually, is capable of getting a loan, right? He needs to get a loan. So that's what at Active we do, and we create what is called as an active score, which is useful for both the enterprises and for the financial institutions. And that's what the power of AI brings in, where I can crunch massive amounts of data. As a programmer all through my life for over 20 years, we have multiple tools in our kitty. Right, I call myself a carpenter with my own tools. Even the performance monitoring tool I get, or even a programming language or scripts that we write, all of them are tools for me. And one of the most powerful tool for me is AI. So even to me, a simple if then else, right? It's very capable.
One thing which I find in the industry is that AI is often used as a marketing term than a technical term, right? And quite often, sometimes like you rightly pointed out, I mean, people use if then else rules, and then they label it as AI. Right? But then if you roll back AI, simple if then else rules or rule lists were something that was developed in AI first, right? So it is as valid an AI tool as any. Correct. And it's just that people have understood it to such a great extent. So the mystique of AI is missing from these kinds of grounded tools, right? And so having said that, So there are problems in which classical AI techniques like rule-based decision making or logic or even search-based solution methods are still appropriate. But then what has happened over the last decade now, and what distinguishes this generation of AI from the earlier generations is that these tools are no longer in the labs. So for me, AI has been something that we always do in the lab, and then when you finally go out and implement code, then you just have this very standard design patterns and things like that, which you pull out and then you write code and then you solve problems.
Correct.
But now to say that, hey, look, I'm writing tools, I'm developing, I'm doing research, I'm publishing papers, and a week later somebody from a startup is coming and asking me, hey, can I use this in doing X, Y, Z? I mean, that kind of a development has happened in AI in recent times. Is really exciting for me.
From the industry point of view, what do you think is going to change big time from the AI/ML point of view? How is it going to revolutionize, you think, Professor?
So, I mean, AI technology is going to get better and better, right? So, for some of the things that we had difficulty processing in an automated fashion, like speech and images and things like that, right, now become almost commonplace, right? And then this is going to keep growing, right? So we are going to get better and better tools for analyzing things like relationships. Right? That's already, you are seeing that already, right? So not just in social media, I'm talking about things outside of social media as well, right? So you're going to be able to look at larger and larger volumes of ancillary information, and have an AI start reasoning like a human being as to what are the different aspects of a person, right? And take all of that into account, right? So you're going to get more and more nuanced decisions from AI, right? Because the technology is moving so fast, right? So we haven't had time to sit back and reflect on what the effect of this technology is, right? So there is something to be said about, thinking about the larger social impact of adopting certain kinds of technology. Okay, if I'm going to use AI to make loan decisions, right? If I'm going to learn completely from prior data and making loan decisions, so what are the things that I should guard against? So what will change?
So I think concepts like ethical AI and human-in-the-loop machine learning and stuff like that, which is very, very important. And other point you brought out, right? What if there is the loan underwriting process where we might end up giving a loan. In the pure name of AI, we start giving out to whatever alternate credit scores and stuff like that. It's a very important point, because 2 points I want to address there. One is underwriting point of view, you need to be careful in the name of AI what you're doing. Second is to keep the social impact in mind. So the idea should not be to replace people, but to increase their productivity, where we are able to actually make the productivity better and start and that's the power of AI, I think, and especially coming from institution like IIT, I think something that we need to really think about social aspects of AI. I think that's really a power that I think we are now experiencing, and thanks to the research that you and the team does, right, all the academic institutions are able to do, we're able to consume it really fast. So there is a need for simplistic rules engine. At the same time, something that's complex developed out of labs like here, it's very, very powerful for us.